Welcome everyone to today's webinar on competence needed to make your workforce digital ready with Julia Muller. My name is Thomas Igu, Head of Content at Copperberg. Before we get started, just a few general information. The recording of the webinar will be made available to everyone post-event. And when the webinar ends, you will get a link to an evaluation form. So if you could just take a minute and fill it out to leave a feedback for Julia and us at Copperberg. Another bit of information, we have an upcoming event coming up in June on field service that was supposed to take place in Düsseldorf on the 3rd and 4th in June. Due to the ongoing situation across Europe, we have decided to make the event a virtual summit. So everyone who's attending the webinar today will get a coupon to get an invitation to the event. So check your inbox post-webinar to activate the coupon. And also, as an FYI, we have another webinar coming up later today at 3 o'clock. This will be done via another Zoom link, so make sure to go back to your inbox if you've signed up for that one, because it will not be running on the same link as this one. So without further ado, if I can please welcome Julia. And Julia, off to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Thomas. Welcome from my side as well, from the home office in Hamburg in Germany. So I hope you're all doing well. And yeah, I think we just get started. So to give you a short introduction about myself, my name is Julia Müller. I have a master's in petroleum engineering, worked internationally as field service engineer, but also as director of digital solutions and services, and now own Tigris Consulting. So what you will learn today. Firstly, we will talk about the motivation of your field service engineer or your technical service engineer. I'll talk about the why. Also, we're going to discuss shortly the competencies on the company side. So how can you support your field service engineers? And also, we will talk about the competencies on the side of your technical service engineer. So what are basically the characteristics or the skills your people need in order to be successful in the field? So the digital age is as much about people as it is about technology. And I would like to give you a short example of that. So if you just imagine a generation X, so the father calls the son, who's a millennial, and he says, I would like to import an image via email. So the son says, well, you could open your email on your phone and attach the image from your gallery. Or secondly, you could sync your photos to the cloud so you can access it anywhere on your email ID, for example. Or lastly, you could access WhatsApp on your computer and download the image and then attach it to your email. So if you're sitting in front of the screen now, you might either ask yourself, so what exactly is the son talking about? Or why did the father not think about this? So you see, we have a little generational gap or problem here, but the common problem is really how to solve problems. So how can a company help their personnel and their employees be successful in the field? So in the very beginning, it's important to brief your technical service engineers and give them basically the reasoning why you're introducing technology. So that could be you want to increase your productivity, so your revenue. It could also be that you want to provide new ways of working or build the competitive edge. So that's the company's reason, but it's also important to give your people the background and let them know that this is not only giving them another tool that they have to use, but also that it's making their life easier and that they might be able to do their job better by working with that tool and basically being able to to basically help the client better and have more information available, whatever it may be, with warranty, service, repair, sales, you name it. So what are the company competencies we need? First of all, of course, your personnel needs to be trained very well. So you might think of developing teaching movies or set up classroom training. I'll get to that later on as well. Of course, you need to provide equipment which must be reliable and state of the art, or at least appropriate for that situation. So if you have a field service engineer that is in the field at a refinery, for example, in an explosion zone, in an X zone, and he needs to make a call, but the phone is not working in an X zone, then he might try to get a new data plan or try to connect or change from telecom to O2 or whatever, which again takes a lot of time and doesn't look very good. So then it's actually not helpful for the field service engineer to use that tool. And then he or she might decide, well, I might not use that equipment anymore because it doesn't really help me. It doesn't help me do my job. So that's about equipment. And from an organizational standpoint, you as a company can also provide organizational support. So if your field service engineers need an email address, of course, that's helpful. Some people say, well, our field service engineers don't need that. It really depends on your setup. But I had the case where the client used digital signage, for example, but our company only accepted original paper documents that needed to be signed as timesheets. So obviously that was a little clash in technologies and didn't help very well. So let's continue to your field service company, your service engineers. So this is a lot of text, but I just wanted to show you shortly that according to a study by the World Economic Forum, the necessary skill set from 2018 to 2022 shifted quite a bit. So the analytical thinking is still important, but as you can see from 2018 to 2022, active learning and learning strategies become much more important. Creativity, originality, and initiative become more important. But at the same time, critical thinking and analysis, as well as complex problem solving, is less important because now you might have the technology to do that for you. And of course, leadership and social influence is important as well. But for 2022, it also increased in importance. So if we boil that down, the competencies your field service engineers need are relating to character, the creativity that I just mentioned. So basically a positive attitude towards technology, maybe also the guts and the motivation to try something out, to try something new. With regards to technology, that would be the learning that I just talked about. So basically to be able to use the device to handle information, to create new information, but also to edit information. So it doesn't only help to be able to get information from your server, from your company's server, but also to be able to, for example, edit the timesheet, to insert numbers, have it signed, and of course, being safe and responsible online. And last but not least, it comes down to experience. So leadership and social influence, I would put there. If you ask two friends of yours and say you have worked with a digital device or an app, more often than not, you would trust a person more who has worked with that longer, who has more experience, and that would give you the social influence or the leadership. So how do you teach your field service engineers? Of course, you have generational differences, but in general, if you look at the modern learner, they have changed quite a bit. So if you look into that picture, You have a scholar in his study, and he is nothing like our learner today. So he's sitting there quietly, alone, and studying, while our modern learner is very impatient and easily distracted. At the same time, they won't watch videos for longer than 4 minutes. So what I talked about earlier, that you could do training videos as a company and provide that, make sure it's very short, because our learner doesn't sit there like this scholar and studies all day long. Like they're too easily distracted, and often interrupted as often as 5 minutes, which could also be due to their smartphone, which is unlocked up to 9 times an hour. So not much time to concentrate on training input. And 80% of the workforce learning happens on the job. So interaction with peers is very interesting, or very important. Teammates and managers. People learn a lot more from their teammates than from a manager that says, well, you have to do it this and that way. Whereas if teammates say, so we have the social influence again, if teammates say, hey, look at this and this works very well and you can use it in these settings, then that might motivate your people much more to use that technology. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. Stay healthy in these times, and I'm open to questions, comments, and would be happy to connect on either of those channels.
Great. Thank you very much, Julia. So we do have Q&A time now, and of course I have some questions already that I would like to ask you. Before we do so, actually, one thing, of course, we will discuss is kind of how the current situation across Europe, with a lot of countries in confinement and many personnel from field service, but from also headquarters and any types of sectors or organizations, are working remotely, and how that is impacting then organizations. So if I could ask everyone to answer a very short poll right now. So how is the current pandemic affecting your field service personnel?
Do you want me to answer already?
It should pop up on everyone. I don't think it will. I don't know if you see it as the host. I think it's just for participants. But so, do you see the results yourself, Julia?
No.
No. I will give a few more seconds to participants to answer how the current pandemic is affecting their field service personnel. So I will end the poll now, and I think, Julia, I will share the results so you can, everyone should be able to see then the results. Do you see them yourself?
Yes.
Perfect.
So I see as the most important factor changing work schedules to longer time at home to see whether people develop symptoms. And the second one is basically continuing business as usual. So yeah, very, very interesting poll.
So what is your thoughts based on the survey, but just also on how the pandemic is developing, and also the uncertainty in terms of how long it will last? Do you have any ideas on how organizations could create some kind of routine and work with their customers, but also their field service personnel, to manage the current situation to the best of their abilities?
Yeah, well, I think, well, of course, it depends on case and on the company, what you have as service personnel, what you have available. But I think the best way is to talk to your customer openly, to state on your website what is possible, what is not possible. I heard this morning that one company leaves their field personnel internationally, so they don't take everybody home to the headquarters in order to still allow for some kind of traveling. So for example, between Romania and Hungary, that's still possible. Um, Also, it's interesting or important to yeah, have things like put field service personnel into the workshop, into the production site, so they can still work if they're not sent abroad to support the customer. And also ask the customer for help. Like, let them be creative. If they really want you to work for them, then they can probably find a way and talk to the local government and get permissions for things, and get permits that you might, as a service provider, you might not be able to get because you are not headquartered in that country.
Okay. And in your previous employment, did you ever have some kind of risk management or plan for if anything like this would happen? Or is it just so unusual or unheard of, it was not really something you would have planned for?
To be honest, no, it was nothing that we ever planned for. But I would say it doesn't really matter how long this continues. Important is that you have a lot of people in your home office and are able to be reachable by customers and talk to them frankly and keep them in the loop. If you have like shortages in spare parts, let them know upfront, let them know what your current status is. If you can, send them daily updates and say, we keep you in the loop, but we can't provide this and that. So of course, that will not give the customer the best service, but it will at least allow the customer to be in the loop and to be informed and to be still considered important because you make the effort to at least inform them.
Yeah. And we have a question coming in now. So since we can assume that many people and organizations will ramp up their digital skills now just out of necessity, do you think many firms will take this, so this new digital approach as the new normal and refrain from physical learning offers in the future after the crisis? So kind of the new routine we will create now, would that become then the normal after the crisis?
No, I don't think so, because in general, human interaction is most important. And I think that won't be the new normal. However, I do think that companies will see that suddenly things are possible to do digitally, which were never attempted to do before because there was never the necessity to do that. So I think it will be a significant shift towards digital, but it won't be the new normal.
Okay. Okay, so to move on then from the current pandemic, and then to kind of go back more to general competences required currently for field service organizations. Of course, one of the big trends in the past couple of years is the drop in the number of applicants in technical studies. And of course, that is having an impact in terms of the pool of potential workforce for manufacturing or industrial organizations. So how can you, as an industrial organization today and a field service business, how can you, it's a twofold question in a way. How can you make yourself more attractive to the younger generation that is coming out of technical studies, but how can you, as a industry, so kind of an ecosystem of organizations, work to make your sector more attractive to potential students to go into technical studies?
Mm. Well, we had it, for example, at our university that we had companies regarding that field of work come to our university and host like a short or a small job fair. So I can only recommend to companies to go to universities and attract field service personnel right from university, and that would mean that people have to unite and say, okay, we all try to attract field service engineers from technical studies from this and that university. But it would also mean that you share costs and that you would have all those potential new employees on one spot, and it would be much easier than trying to attract them online, for example. um, but yeah, I think it's not only attractive if you offer a higher salary, for example, but you could also offer more international experience or flexible work hours, or maybe even technical training courses that would be acknowledged throughout the whole industry or company, yeah, across companies. So that would make things easier when people do change companies after all.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned already for training videos, for example, to make them as short as possible, because younger people tend to be more impatient and don't watch videos more than 4 minutes. Um, are there any other types of perhaps recruitment or even onboarding processes to make yourself more attractive, and also kind of understand new recruits who typically also have shorter work cycles within the same organization, so they tend to move around between company to company more than previous generations? So kind of taking that into consideration from the get-go when you hire from the
Yeah.
younger generation.
Yeah, well, if you hire millennials, for example, as I said, the um, basically, yeah, training that you could give people, and if that is a certificate that can be used industry wide or across companies, then you would also have a benefit if you hire someone who has been working with a competitor for like 4 or 5 years and then changes to your company because they already have the certificate that you can use as well. So it doesn't have to be yeah, seen as negative all the time. However, I think it's very important to, yeah, to offer people perspectives and maybe tell them, well, if you work a couple of years in field service, you could become a manager or you could change careers in this and this way. So I think people often look at one position without knowing what their career progression could be. And if you offer that and you see, okay, as a student, you see where you could be going and where you could be moving on to, that might make a company much more interesting as well.
Okay. Yeah. Another question: are soft skills more important than technical skills in the recruitment process today? Because there is, of course, as we move towards more data driven and kind of digital driven organizations, the technical requirements is very much different than, say, 5, 10 years ago. However, working in more, and I think everyone is probably experiencing this today, working in very remote environment where you need to communicate with virtual colleagues in different locations, sometimes who have different cultures. That is also actually a very important skill as well, the whole virtual communication aspect, but it's a very different requirement than the technical aspects. So is there one aspect that you look at more, technical versus kind of the soft skills or personality, or are they both equally as important?
Um, I'd say it should be a yes, because technology only helps you in solving the customer's problems. So what we had on the very first slide, the how, But to understand the client's problem and to basically see them and understand them from maybe an emotional point of view, if they say, oh, well, we have a sudden unexpected shutdown and we have a standstill and we're losing a lot of money, you might have to be creative and you have to be assertive and take the client by the hand and say, hey, we're going to fix this and we can help you do that. And I think this has nothing to do with technological skills that you can learn, whereas the soft skills are much harder to learn. It's more of a question of character, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Another question coming in. Do you think that companies or engineers employed by a company will be replaced by kind of, okay, the way the question is phrased, drone typed engineers from the gig economy, so a type of Uber like field workforce supported remotely or digitally by company specialists?
Yes, that could very well be. I think many companies are also using consultants already because they don't have enough field service engineers, so they support them remotely. And I think it's especially in Corona or pandemic times like these. It's very helpful to have video support and yeah, show your customer how to repair tools themselves, for example, or to talk to an electrician or a different third party in that country that could help you. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think the question actually was more for the the field engineers themselves who go to customer sites. Do you think in the near future, and I know it kind of already exists to some degrees, but that most companies would work with field engineers that are outsourced and work as kind of freelancers, maybe under an umbrella organization, very much like Uber with drivers, and
Mhm.
then the say operational center in the back end then would be operated by company specialists who would then remote guide the outsourced freelance engineer at the company or the customer site.
Yeah, I could very well imagine that. We did that as well. If we didn't have enough staff, we asked different companies to support engineers, field service engineers, and they basically were equipped with our personal protective equipment and our hardware, and then they were sent to the field.
So a follow-up question on that. Do you know of any apps commercially available today that do that, kind of connect freelance engineers to work with the OEM or the kind of operator of the machines?
No, unfortunately not. I think that's a very good idea. Maybe I should look into developing that. But no, unfortunately not. At the moment, it's really just recommendation by word or contacts your network that you have, and you ask people in the same position, can you recommend a good service company or a good service engineer? And then that's the way to go.
Okay. I think when I was researching this actually a year or two ago, there was one in the US, but the name escapes me. But I can try and get back to the person who asked the question later on. So I had another question regarding diversity and even more specifically gender diversity within after sales or even more generically manufacturing. We did research survey about 8 months ago with about 200 plus service leaders, and from the research we found out that it's only about 10% of managerial positions within the service or after sales side of manufacturing companies that are filled by women. How how is your experience with this, and how do you think what could be done, or what is already being done, if you've seen something already done in your previous employment, or within other organizations to kind of change that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think in general, companies should be more open to job sharing or part-time work if you have yeah, single moms. But at the same time, you would have to be more open to paternity leave as well, because if you have a dual career, or two people working in the same company doing dual career, then if you want to support women in managerial positions, you would have to support the father in that perspective as well. I think equalizing pay is a very big issue that I experienced, which is really, really hard because, yeah, of course, companies say, well, we do pay people equally, but then it might turn out that actually it isn't that way. And I think a career progression plan, what I mentioned earlier as well, is really important, because if women see that, or any employee sees that they can advance and they are not stuck in one position no matter what happens, then they might be more motivated to yeah, work from home. And if the company allows flexible work hours, if say you can work from 8:30 to 3 p.m. in the office, and then pick your kid up from school and work 2 more hours from home. I think after the whole pandemic, companies might be more open for that as well. But yeah, really goes to see.
Yeah, I think from a lot of interviews we've also conducted on the issue, it really comes or stems from absolutely a cultural perspective, both in terms of every, of course, country has different cultures in terms of how they treat parental leave, but also organizational culture as well. Um, so it's unfortunately not an easy thing to fix like that, because it takes a lot of work both within an organization, but also, yeah, from a country culture, it's much harder to deal with, of course, from an organizational perspective.
Mm. Yeah, also childcare. If you have a company kindergarten, I mean that's excellent, but you still have to see whether you're a company that's big enough to afford that, if it really makes sense. But if you have that, you're obviously more attractive for parents, be it mothers or fathers, to work for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Julia, this actually concludes our webinar for today. So I wanted to give you a warm virtual thank you for your time today. I hope everyone has enjoyed the webinar. We will have, again, a short evaluation form. So if I could ask everyone to just take a minute to fill it out. And we have another webinar upcoming in about 25 minutes. The link has been shared with everyone, if you have not signed up for it, in the chat. So you can just click on it and sign up for it now. So I will, again, thank you very much, Julia, for your time today.
Thank
And
you.
again, the recording of this webinar will be made available to everyone post-event. So thank you for your time, and hopefully see you in about 25 minutes for the next webinar.
All right. Speak soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.